Welcome to the show, StatGDP. Did I get that right? Yes, I did. From atoms to ethics. It's Fool Me Twice here. We have on the line as well. Where's my couch? How you doing? Where's my couch?
My couch. Yeah, I'm doing fine. Still looking for the couch as always. I might have bought a couple couches from Bob's Furniture out here, and they're still not my couch. They're not what I wanted.
No matter what, it's still not your couch. I thought you transferred it to you, though. So isn't it yours now? Because you
I bought it and it's in my living room, but it still doesn't feel like it's my couch. So I'm still looking for my couch.
Well, what qualifies as yours, though? Because we want to talk about ownership today. We want to talk about justification and what is justice and what qualifies as legitimate force usage on taking and owning your own stuff, right? So what does it mean to own your own couch or own your own stuff? If you transferred it to yourself by taking it out of a store and doing some digital transaction that they allowed you to pass outside with in possession of it in your cart or whatever, or however they delivered it to you, then isn't it yours?
Well, it's yours as much as anyone around me is willing to admit that it's mine and not theirs. Because the moment I buy it, someone else who hasn't paid for anything in their entire life could be like, hey, that's a nice couch. That's my couch. So I'm going to pull a gun out and point it at you until you drop this couch and run away. And therefore they have my couch. But is it my couch? No. Now it's their couch because they get to do whatever they want with it. Even though I paid for it, I can still say that guy stole my couch. But really, all that happened is that guy has a couch now. And I don't. And it's, I guess what am I saying? No one's entitled to anything at any given point in time. No one owns anything. It's only as much as anyone around you is willing to admit that you own that thing. And the only reason why they would feel inclined to, accept that you own that thing is because they have one of their own. If no one else around you had a couch and you're the only person in the community with a couch, I assure you in this day in 2025, everyone's going to come after you.
Yeah, isn't it just the willingness to participate in the defense of that couch that qualifies them as the owner? Because if you're not willing to defend your own couch, then someone else is more willing to conquer it. I guess at that point it's theirs because you've submitted to their will power of pointing the gun or whatever they're using to threaten you with. So if they conquer it, is that conquest? Is conquest valid? Does that make it theirs, I guess? If ownership is arbitrary and just based on acceptance and, qualifying in the social context of having some kind of social contract go through where you've accepted that they are now taking ownership, then effectively, as you may be implying, it is theirs at that point. At least for the time being, until someone else decides they want it even more, so much that they're willing to die for it or whatever, right?
That's what I was going to say. I was just going to go dark there and be like, hey, what if you die for your couch? Is it still your couch? No, it's not. I mean, but should you even die for a couch?
So if it's not worth dying for a couch, then it's another proof of the fact that you don't actually own anything, because what is really worth dying for? Only the things you care about the most, which is your family or your own life, whoever you care about most in your community. It's really, you don't own the members of your community, and you technically don't own your family, or if you have kids, you don't own your kids in the sense of having them as chattel or slaves or anything like that, right? So, I guess we're getting to the idea that it is true that you don't fully own anything because it's all just whatever is accepted on paper as proof of ownership, certification or whatever, and everything is really the law of the jungle at the end of the day. It's whoever is willing to die the most for anything owns it the most, because it's assumed that their own life force matters the most to them. So if they're willing to die for it, then they must care enough that they actually own it, at least as much as they feel they own their own life or whatever, I guess.
Right. And to follow along with that, the couch follows the rule of the jungle, right? In my opinion, because if you think about just, I always go back to animals, just squirrels or something in a tree. It's like the couch is like the tree. I mean, the squirrel can be the only squirrel on that tree for as long as it knows, and the longer it remains the only squirrel on that tree, the more it feels entitled to quote unquote own that tree. But then another squirrel can come by and just like a bigger squirrel or something and just absolutely fight it off or kill it or basically make it so that that's no longer that previous squirrel's tree. But like that tree will always outlive hundreds of squirrels. And so nothing ever owns anything, right? I mean, if the couch that I want to find, where's my couch, right? If I want to find my couch, like, assuming I find it, it's not going to be mine. It will be in my possession. I'll be able to use it for as long as I'm able to defend my usage of it, like you're saying, against everyone else who wants to use it. Hopefully, it's not a very highly sought after couch. Something that just, an ugly one that I happen to have sentimental value towards, because that will be the easiest way to get what I want without true competition. But likely that's not the case, right? So.
So then, how do we come up with an actual system of justice that makes any sense, right? Because we have this concept of modern civilization of property ownership and the ability to own not only land but physical possessions that are owned in your name because they've been transferred in this financial system to you in some kind of transaction. And how do we justify any kind of two-tiered system of justice where, on the one hand, thou shalt not steal or whatever, which implies property ownership exists. But on the other hand, it's like, make sure you take care of the poor or whatever. Or like, if somebody needs something so much that they're willing to die or kill for that, then maybe they care about it more than you do, so you should just give it to them. In other words, how do you justify stopping crime at that point? You know what I mean? And how do we have a society where we believe in property ownership and enforcing justice and penalizing criminals, while at the same time saying, well, criminals deserve that second chance of redemption because their next arc is that they just had to lash out to get what they wanted in the moment, and they were just acting on their survival instincts, so they're not that bad after all, and maybe they deserve to get what they stole because they were just trying to get what they need, and they were more desperate than whoever's not a criminal, so maybe crime is good. How do you justify at what point anyone truly needs anything enough to enforce justice, I guess, if the law of the jungle truly applies at all times?
It's hard because the social construct we placed upon ourselves as humans, like, absolutely defies the law of the jungle, right? The reason why we come up with all these laws on paper to say, oh, like, this one human owns this one property on this address on this street with that amount of acreage, with that square footage. The whole reason to do that is to hopefully stop, a violence on the masses, right? Because if you just told everyone, hey, this is free land, everyone go nuts, free for all, right? It would be absolute just wreckage. And the only way to have any semblance of control over any of that is to say, all right, you guys are all quote unquote entitled to quote unquote own pieces of land, even though none of you really do. We're not going to tell you that, but none of you really do. But we're going to give you this like facade of it because that will keep you under control. That will keep you from murdering your neighbor. And we're going to try to streamline as many of these products like couches as much as possible so that you're not trying to kill each other over simple goods, right? Which is, well, I can bring this up later, but it's just funny because during COVID, they really tested that. It's like, could everyone kill each other over something simple like toilet paper, right? And the answer was yes. So anyway, going back to ownership, I just bought a house here, right? And I won't say what the city.
Yeah.
So it's good, but it's a pretty big investment. And every step of the way, you realize more and more that you don't own anything, right? Because everyone says, "Oh, I bought a house," but what they really mean is they took out a loan to get a mortgage, which is another loan, to allow them to pay a certain monthly fee on a family home, right? And
Yeah.
it's not like, people just spend $250,000, $500,000 to buy out a house. No, they just literally cheated the system, borrowed a lot of money from the government, probably money they can never really realistically return in like a short amount of time, before it really just starts to absolutely compound to the point where it's just unpayable for a lot of people. Like a lot, they don't think about that. They still say they own the house, right? And I have a lot of trouble even saying I own the house now, because I've taken the mortgage out. I know I'm borrowing from the government. I know they've quote unquote allowed me to have this house, this land, as this facade, like I was saying earlier, to keep me under control from killing my neighbor. And I get it. Like, I'm not trying to kill my neighbor, right? I'm not saying I'm trying to, I'm fighting against
You're
it.
explaining the gap between the law of the jungle, which is the baseline of any nature or situation, versus how do we get here to the situation where we have all these mortgages and these loans and these interest rates and these homeowners, whatever, associations and regulations and insurance and fire insurance and whatever, and all this follow-up on these things, and the ability to still occupy a place and expect that it is defended by law in a way that makes you not have to absolutely lash out violently in order to defend your fortress or whatever, but feel that you have governmental backing outside of yourself, that there are other armed forces somehow on your side to make you feel that you have ownership over the situation, when really it's the fortress scenario. It's yours if you're willing to defend it to the death, I guess, still, which means self-defense basically, but just hoping that we don't have a bunch of robberies and armed robbery situations and home invasions and things, and everyone is readily capable enough to make their own home called their own basically, and hopefully have most people in homes of some kind and not being on the streets wanting someone else's home, I guess, which is also a major problem, I guess. Although a lot of people kind of just choose to not have homes or be homeless, or can't really hold down what they need to not be homeless. So it just is kind of that lifestyle, I guess. But anyway, you were saying?
Well, no, I mean, just to go along with that, I mean, everyone chooses security over freedom. But, and to go along with what you're saying, I forget what, I guess it was a YouTube short or something, all these Karens and whatnot, right? Back in the days, watching these Karens, and I forget exactly what was the instigator for this video, but basically some Karen was yelling at the person recording this video and saying don't touch me, if you touch me, or if you hit me, I'm gonna call the cops, right? And they're talking to each other, they're neighbors or something, yelling at each other, and the lady's yeah, if you hit me, I'm calling the cops. And I'm thinking to myself, if he hits you, you're on the ground, you're probably going to be hurt. If he hits you again, you're going to get really hurt, and you're probably going to die before the cops even show up. So it's how much are you going to trust authority to protect your life, to protect your security? It's you really have to defend for yourself on both the mental and physical front, right? For me, the first thing I did actually is get internet and get security cameras set up in my house. It's I'm not actively fighting against a perpetrator, but I at least want to catch them, right? And I don't have a gun yet, but I'm actually gonna get some. And it's not because it's not because oh yeah, we like movies, oh yeah, shoot them up. No, dude. Everyone has the right to protect themselves physically, right? And you're not gonna be oh my god, someone's breaking into my house, let me call the cops. I hope they get there and get here in time. It's no, dude, F that. I'm pulling out a gun.
Yeah, or have to convince them that it's a dangerous enough situation to actually show up in the first place, to where it's oh, are you really fearing for your life, or do you know, that maybe asking follow-up questions like, oh, can you describe the perpetrator? And it's like, no, they're like in another room, like banging on stuff. Like I can't. It's like someone's invading.
Yeah.
Like you want me to look out and like get destroyed by them in order to describe them when they're like wearing some mask or something? Like, yeah,
Right.
you don't want to have to like convince someone else to care about your own safety as much as you do, and then wait on them
Exactly.
to show up and actively care as much as you do about your own safety, which nobody can, because logistically speaking, there are just way more potential inflictions of violent forces available among humans, like on a mano level. Like any man or woman
Right.
is capable of inflicting damage to another human being, and because that's a one-to-one, it's like it's never going to be a situation where there's enough security forces to like account for how many human bodies there are. So yeah, anything besides like a one-to-one is unworkable, because obviously people are far apart and cannot respond if someone's like 10 feet away. So yeah, as you were saying.
Yeah, no, I agree. A one-to-one, like, everyone has their own bodyguard kind of situation, right? That'd be interesting. But that would mean the bodyguard needs the bodyguard also. So it'd be like
Right.
a pyramid scheme. Yeah,
It is a pyramid scheme, and it ends up just
Yeah.
looping back in and meaning that
Yeah,
every
right.
family or every man for himself and like
Right.
everyone in your family like has got your back and you have their back, and
Yeah,
that's all that it can be. Is it has to
That's
loop
all
back
it
in on
is.
itself.
Right. It's just how big of a loop do you want? Like, how many like layers do you want to go through before it comes back, kind of thing. Like, man. Oh,
Yeah.
geez.
But that makes it very difficult then to square this whole situation of justice and the justice system, right? Because going back to the whole loop or cause-effect relation of crime and poverty, right? It's like,
Sure.
we talked about this earlier off the
Right.
podcast, but when it comes to the natural state of humanity and the whole law of the jungle, well, the default situation of nature is poverty, right? Poverty is
Right.
a state of nature. You're born with nothing, and if ownership doesn't truly exist except to the extent you're willing to defend things to the death in order to hold
Right.
on to them physically or whatever, then poverty by default is the case, and therefore how does wealth exist, or how does anything besides poverty exist? Well, it has to do with some kind of clever manipulation of existing or resources that you create or figure out how to gather and make work in your favor collaboratively, usually enough to like somehow build a civilization, which apparently is really hard to do and sustain and takes generations and maybe centuries, right, to actually get to a comfortable level, I guess. And yet it can easily fail within one generation, right? If we all go crazy, it all can just collapse in like 10, 20, 30 years back to like the Stone Ages, I guess, probably, right? So like when it comes to the state of nature being poverty, it's like, how can wealth come from anything? I guess that's my explanation for it. Whereas the question of crime and whether like a state of poverty implies that people will lash out and commit crime, and more likelihood, maybe it is the case that poverty, it correlates with crime, but does it cause crime, or does crime cause poverty, or is it just a feedback loop? And how do you, if any case is possible to get out of it, because wealth does exist, if it does, then how do you get out of that loop? You know what I mean?
It's hard. I think it's impossible to get out of the loop without crime.
Because
You
you have to keep
could
people
potentially-
honest.
You could potentially make everyone believe that they're not in poverty, but it won't stop crime because people will always want more for whatever reason, right? And so I think, but that doesn't mean that crime is the root of everything. It just
No.
means that I still believe poverty is the resting state of the
Yeah.
life or the universe or whatever you want to call it, right? So
Right.
anything that's different from that, you have to add energy to actively sustain, right? The
Right.
further you go from it, the more energy you have to apply to sustain that level, right? And that's what we're doing right now. It's like you're saying, anything could topple this over. Anything could end this reaction right here. Like, because we're already like stretching so hard to separate ourselves from this resting state of poverty that anything could perturb this, like you're saying.
Yeah, even doing nothing, right. Because the resting state is poverty, as you said, implying that right. If you just sat and did nothing for however long, just arbitrarily long time periods, then you would starve, obviously. You'd get hungry, you would get thirsty, and you would run out of batteries, you'd run out of energy, you run out of lights, and like fire, just heating, AC, whatever. You would run out of your resources, which like financially you'd run out of your money, and then like you'd be basically back in poverty and just like be homeless or in the woods or whatever, and then like you'd just be back in it like within some kind of less than a generation time frame, basically. Usually clearly less than 30 years for most people, and arguably like 6 months for a lot of people, apparently, So like somehow we're like mostly somehow on an individual level for like the average person maybe only like a year away or something. Like maybe not you or me or whoever, but like on an average level it seems like most people are only like a year or two away, maybe at best, I guess, these days in some cases. And I don't know, it's like to the extent that they wouldn't be a year or hopefully like longer than 6 months away from going back to the state of poverty. It's like, what would happen if that did happen, and would everyone lash out and try to like rob each other in order to like have that purge scenario come about, right? Because obviously, apocalyptic scenarios are very interesting to ponder. Everyone ponders them because it's always something that's possible. It does happen like every once in a while, and that's therefore there are tons and tons of stories and like novels and movies and things about them, and video games or whatever that everyone kind of fantasizes about to some extent and wishes that they would go through some kind of hero's journey where they are the ones that come out on top and somehow defend their fortress enough to like still be around as one of the final like 1% or like 0.01% of people who like rises out of the rubble and like restarts civilization somehow, whereas 99.99% of us would not be, by definition. So like, I don't know, do you think that in those kind of electromagnetic pulse scenarios where the power goes out everywhere and then modern civilization has to reset and we're basically completely screwed for a while, that most people would just lash out and try to like rob each other and see who can just like grab at the most possible amount of still available resources to try and fake our way into not being in poverty again, basically? Like, what do you think, how do you think that scenario would play out?
I go back to that whole resting state thing, that people in urbanized areas will far further from resting state, they will probably lash out harder than people who are like closer to resting state, like out where you are. You know what I mean? Like, there will be, it will be a varying degree. I mean, there will be a spectrum, I guess, but on average, it's probably going to still, I'm hoping, kind of trend towards the positive, I guess. And it's another reason why I say you made the right call in getting out of certain areas.
Yeah.
It's just, I can't say I'm doing the same thing. So, and I'm willing to see, part of me knows that something crazy will happen within, our lifetimes, and I'm choosing to stick around in the thick of it to just witness how bad it gets in humanity. However dark that just sounded, I'm honest.
Yeah, basically.
Because it might just get that bad, right? and I'm prepared to stick around and report on it.
Okay, so you are being a doomer then. So what is the most likely doomer scenario that you think is, going to happen? Because obviously there's at any given time the electromagnetic pulse factor, which could be an attack targeted on a country or just the world, or it could just be some thing from outer
It's
space.
equivalent to my old analogy of somebody in control of everything and hitting the red button. Right? So, like, I imagine, the red button getting hit on society, essentially, right? Like, you're asking what I think would happen, like, if it happened tomorrow, essentially.
Yeah, or by the next 5 years or so.
Oh, 5 years? Oh, by 2030. Oh man, by that point, there'd be a lot of cars even like on the grid, fully electric. So, a lot like transportation for sure would be hindered way more than we could imagine right now. So that would be one big factor that is hard to guess at this moment. But just based off of, like social media and like ability to like access information quickly. I would say the immediate reaction is still like chaos.
It would be total utter chaos because now I'm thinking about the EMP scenario where it's not even an attack, but it's just a electromagnetic event from space. I'm just thinking of gamma ray burst, whatever, some high energy pulse just takes out the power grid and messes with anything that's connected to anything, right? Just totally fries everything. So like, I'm thinking of the people who still want to charge their iPhones, the people who still want to like do the whole whatever, like posting on social media. It's like city people who are still, city people who are still like, oh no, like I need the next like TikTok video or something, and it's like, oh no, I need this like dopamine hit or whatever, and then it's like, at that point, what are they gonna do? They're going to have to like go to some electric generator somewhere that's underground enough or somewhere that they can find out that exists somewhere. And then it's like, at that point, anyone who wants to have the resources and not be all of a sudden impoverished like the natural state of nature at that point would be fighting it out over the last available few resources that aren't going to be available soon anyway because, right, most people would want them. And then they would immediately go away and be done with because it's like only going to supply like 1% or less of the demand at that point, like for a short time period of like a week or less than a month or something. And then it'll just be gone effectively permanently until everything is actually built back up, right? So if everyone just rushed to try and maintain the unsustainable level of wealth or living standard that they think they're entitled to still, then that would just result in absolute chaos for a good amount of time, right?
You know what's really dark, man? Since we're on this topic, and this is on record here, so I'm coming out with this, but like people would want to have their devices, online powered up, their usual experience like dopamine hit stuff, like you're saying. They would want it so badly that a lot of people would probably die for it, literally. And like, because I'm saying that because they're at that point you should be fighting for food, not like ability to use your smart device or something. But a lot of people would forget that food is more important than maintaining whatever interaction it is they have with their smart devices. And the reason why I say that is because I think that I'll show you some of these reports later, but in Hong Kong, in Singapore and stuff like that, there's like several cases of kids in like internet cafes literally dying at the keyboard, like playing League of Legends for like a week straight without eating anything, right? And it's like, this isn't a country that's like first world and has food. Right? Imagine when food is scarce and they get all of their devices taken away. Which one would they care about first? Like,
it would be hopeless, right? Because a lot of people would not want to be willing to do the hard work of learning how to build back civilization again. And going back to like, okay, what books are around for like herbology or whatever, for like learning how to grow stuff again that most people don't know how to grow everything that they eat. Pretty much nobody does. So like, it would be really rough for most people to accept what the reality of the situation was. And it's like, not many people would just be like, oh, no electricity, no internet anymore. Okay, let's go to like my bookshelf and read all the available like survival books that I have on my bookshelf and be totally studious about that and be totally peaceful about things. And then just go around like to my neighbors and be like, learning any good tips on the herbology, growing front and stuff. It's like most people, unfortunately, I believe, would not be necessarily doing that. And many people would be so, addicted as we are to our devices and all, that we would just be more willing to die to be like the last person on TikTok or whatever, the last person to like still be able to send out or find the next like electricity generator that's like underground or whatever that's still available, that still has a charge in it, that hasn't been fried yet, to hook our devices up to charge it, to still be able to send it to someone somewhere, even if we're the only one on it or something at that point, in order to be the last one to use it and send it to nobody like but ourselves, I guess, in order to like die on that hill, basically. So I think a lot of people are so integrated in like online circumstances that yes, many millions of people from modern civilization would probably be willing to die over that rather than do what they need to do, which is figure out how to farm again, basically, and figure out how to till their land and figure out how to grow the food they need and defend the areas that have that food that can be grown on it. And it would be pretty rough.
I just, man, thought of a really dark image that AI can definitely probably come up with, which is like some image of like a really thin dude who's like dying of hunger, trying to plug in his iPhone into the wall, using the last like ounce of life he has left to plug it in the wall before he dies, kind of thing. Like that's like the darkest image I can think of right now relating to this topic.
Yeah. So going back to crime versus poverty, though, as we've discussed this dark scenario that speculates on how it plays itself out. Well, so is crime, because crime is a way of pretending to accept the notion of property, law or ownership of, bodily autonomy or ownership over objects and things. It's like this pretense that at first, okay, I am going to pretend I'm not going to steal this from you or attack you, and then swoop in and then steal this from you or attack you or something. Because crime is the ability to pretend that property rights exist and then go back to the state of nature, which is the law of the jungle, which is I'll take it from you or knock you out and take it, because you're not going to stop me, or if you dare stop me, I'm going to prove that I care about it as much as my life itself, and do you also, kind of thing. And it's like, because crime is that dishonest breaking of the social contract of pretending you're okay with society until you're not, and then breaking with it, then it's like, what is it? Is crime an act of dishonesty, which I guess it is, or is it also in part an act of honesty of reminding us that the law of the jungle still always applies, because it's still the baseline tendency of like any organism, I guess, of like, well, how much do you really care about it? Like enough to die? And then at that point you're like, no, take my wallet. I don't care enough about $20 or whatever to die over it, or like replacing my license, like whatever,
I mean, it's that whole, there's levels to it. I mean, from the organic level, it's honest, right? Like you're saying, like, that's the most honest way to be looking at things. It's like, well, if I'm not going to defend your things, I'm going to take it from you if I really want them, and you're not willing to like defend it. Basically, but what society does is it builds layers on top of that, and like you said, it like adds rules or something, right? So it's like, well, what was I saying? But it basically just reverses that. right? And so you kind of have to do, and so according to society, it's dishonest, right? And then
Yeah.
you kind of have to juggle the two and decide which one you care about more, right? So I guess you could say for more burglar or for thieves and stuff
Yeah.
like that, like they believe in the law of the jungle, they believe in the organic, like the order of life more, which yeah, you can say it ultimately is correct, right? Like there are people who get away with not working 8 to 5, not doing the quote unquote legal things to like get money and assets the way like the rest of us believe we have to like do and like to get our own kind of thing. But like there are people who get by, right? And so is that wrong? No. Like I feel like they win. You know, they didn't have to feed into this system. They didn't have to trick their mind into like believing anything they didn't want to, in order to get to the same place, if not better, on an absolute financial front or something like that, right? And
Okay.
yeah,
So I may have met this guy one time who may have defrauded a bunch of potential students, or maybe not students, but people who could have been defrauded on their information, whether it's Social Security or however you apply for the FAFSA loans or however you get money to
bro,
go to college if you
insane.
cannot afford it. And there are those who believe that, well, because the law of the jungle applies on the baseline level, and because we have this phony system of legality and justice claiming to protect everybody from injustice because the law is supposedly just, then there are also those who claim that the law itself is corrupt enough that we deserve to, or some people would be justified in going through the loopholes to defraud the government, or people who have, registered numbers, social securities, information, identities registered with the government, which is the rest of the public, that could advantage them by jumping through some of their own loopholes that they, corruptly defraud the rest of us with, because maybe the whole system is fraudulent enough that it's that same law of the jungle mentality that, well, there are those corrupt corporate people out there and they get away with it. They get away with their corporatized law of the jungle by seeing how much we're willing to put up with, as workers or whatever, when we actually, a lot of people believe, the workers deserve more, the corporations should not make as much profit, they should pay more taxes, they shouldn't put their money back into stock buybacks when their company employees don't own as much of the stock, and all this stuff about how much they pay themselves as CEOs and things. And this type of mentality that exists that states pretty much or implies that that whole law of the jungle thing all the way up just continues and is its own kind of set that never stops at any level. It just gets codified into this like more accepted sounding like legalized jargon and corporate like policy and things that sounds more civilized and technical or whatever, and seems to make more sense for the managerial class, but still feels like on some level for a lot of workers screws them over enough to where they think they are then justified in taking back, even though it takes back from potentially unsuspecting other citizens. So I may have met this guy at some point who may have or may not have done time. I'm not sure, for defrauding a whole bunch of people on like phony student loans that were taken all out in their name, that somehow were transferred to another account that he may have somehow figured out how to get access to, and it may have resulted in, several $100,000 of dollars in revenue as a result. And when confronted, with this kind of accusation that, what about the people who are put into debt as a result of that? Because it sounds like identity theft, it's fraud, obviously, and they're not actually registering with the universities or the colleges. They're just signed up for some FAFSA loan and unknowingly getting a whole bunch of debt while the loan amount is transferred to this guy's account somehow, and somehow it's some kind of fraud operation. And
That's crazy.
the response, I guess, was like, well, I don't care, it's not my loan, or like, it's not, I'm not the one paying it off, so why do I care? Right? Yeah. And I guess like that's the response. It's the ability to somehow break with the system or the act of what one just did and only identify with the revenue because, hey, at least I cleverly manipulated the system, I guess. And I don't know if it was gotten away with, but I have seen cases where people are like proudly displaying their ability to commit fraud, I guess, against the system. And it's like, well, if the whole system is fake and corrupt, then what is the verdict on whether that is moral or immoral? And is it just another reminder that crime is dishonest, but it's also honest on some level, because it's that double-edged sword, which is weird, because I haven't really thought of it that way until, like, I guess this conversation,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, right. We're trained to believe it's dishonest, which is why you're questioning it for the first time. Now, I mean, from some lower level, organic level, or whatever, it's somehow honest. It's somehow more honest to our organic beings. It's like, hey. Okay, all right, fine. So, I always have this recurring dream. This is real. Like, I have this recurring dream that, okay, so in the dream, I'm not thinking, hey, I'm, like, doing anything bad, right? Like, I'm thinking,
Right.
hey, I'm having a good time, I'm living life, I'm not doing anything illegal, everything, I'm happy, everyone around me is happy, all that stuff, right? But what happens in the dream is I get, like, into certain cars that are, like, my dream cars, like not Porsche 911s. I get into like Ferraris and like Lamborghinis. This literally happens almost like every other night. If it's a recurring dream, I just like I'm able to like sort of control the dream, so it's kind of a lucid dream. I can like decide which car I want to get into next, and I'll get into it, right? And then I don't really think about it during the dream, but when I wake up and I think about the dream, I'm like, wait, where did I get these cars from? Like,
Right.
and then I try really hard to think back to like the moments in the dream where I got into the cars, and I realize I've stolen them all. Like,
Well, effectively, that's the most realistic scenario that modern society that you've been growing up in, and brought up would paint as like the most likely story of how that must have gone down, I guess. But if it just pops into existence as soon as you want it, then like I don't know, who's to say you didn't like create those cars yourself or something in those dreams?
Sure. They just I mean, yeah.
I mean, it kind of just, it's not like you did a stick up or something, or like robbed someone, I guess, to get the car, right? You probably just thought of the car you wanted to get in next, and then you appeared to be getting into it, I guess, probably.
I don't remember stick up. Okay, I didn't like hold a gun at anyone, but I remember the reason why I kind of think that I stolen all these cars is I remember having conversations with random people before getting into these cars, and it's like I want to get in the. So it's all okay. So I watch a lot of car reviews, and I watch a lot of like. And this is getting too much into it, but like, car reviews, people talking about cars, and then they get into the car and they start talking about the car as they're driving,
right?
And like the DeMuro or something, right?
Yeah.
And I just imagine doing that. So I'm talking about the car with someone, and I get in the car and I drive.
And then you just drive off with it. So it feels like you're agreeing with someone to review their car for them and promote them or whatever their YouTube channel is or whatever their content is, and then you just end up driving off with it. So like I guess you're dreaming of like the dream scenario of the Doug DeMuro, who's like the underground Doug DeMuro, basically, who gets away with like stealing everyone's cars while reviewing them. Yeah.
And then sells it on his site. He has that site.
Yeah.
Like
it's like, how did Doug DeMuro get all those cars? Well, he must have stolen all of them while he was reviewing them.
Reviewing them and speeding off.
Yeah, and then he just like got rid of whoever like was, it was an armed robbery basically. I'll put it like that, And he just got away with it, and no one ever found out.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, maybe Doug DeMuro is a serial killer.
Dude, he's winning the big time out of like all layers of society we've been talking about so far. DeMuro's just been killing it, literally and metaphorically.
But no, I am not accusing Doug DeMuro of being a serial killer, by the way, on record.
No, we're not doing
so
that.
I am not defaming that guy.
No.
But I would be willing to make fun of his videos by editing them, basically, for example, to make him, do YTP type stuff, which are absurd video edits, for those who don't know. But basically, it's hard to justify or know what level you would be, I guess, coming up with a reason for having that dream about that over in terms of like, what does it mean and what lesson is it giving you? Because I guess all dreams basically have a meaning and a lesson behind them of implying what you're feeling or want to do or something, or are thinking of doing but should do, or just like giving you a preview of what your like base urges or something are without getting too like nitty gritty into the details of them or something, but it's just that subconscious urge to like do something. So I don't know, I guess maybe you want to get away with having a whole bunch of cars basically somehow, and it's just not clear how you got all of them,
Right.
But you feel possibly guilty about having taken all of them, or that you don't feel like it's realistic that you'll ever actually get all of them, to be yours in real life.
Right.
So you feel like if you did get all of the ones that you thought you got into and drove off with, that you probably stole them.
I must have stolen them. Yeah, right, exactly. Dude.
But you don't feel like you stole them because you don't feel like you did anything bad, I guess, in the dreams or something.
Right.
Because
exactly.
I also have those dreams, and most people do, I guess, where you're being chased for some reason, but you don't know why you're being chased. You're just being hunted by either some really big, like, threatening guy who's going to kill you, or some really big animal or tiger or something that's also going to kill you. And either you're trying to get away from this animal that you're really unaware of why you got so close to in the first place, like a tiger or something, or you're wondering why you did something so bad that like this force or military operation or something is like trying to chase you and shoot at you and stuff, and you feel like you're about to die. I don't know, like I've had a lot of dreams like that where I feel like I'm about to get shot and I'm completely exposed and screwed, and I just try to like run away still. And
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's one of those where it's like, wow, why did I do something this bad to get in this scenario? Like, how did this happen? And, you just spawn in the situation where you're getting chased, and it's like, man, I didn't feel like I did anything this bad. I don't remember doing anything bad.
Yeah.
And, I don't think I would want to do anything that bad, but apparently I'm like a criminal on the loose or something, It's like, what did I do? Well, I don't know. I don't have any time to think about it because I'm getting like shot at right now, so I'm pretty screwed.
Dude, I have never gotten those. Oh man, I'm sorry. That sounds crazy, man.
Yeah, I don't know. It isn't too bad though, because I don't know. Like I guess as a kid you have dreams that you consider nightmares that scare you or something, but I guess I've had that dream as an adult many times as well, and I don't know. It doesn't feel too bad because it's like more confusing than bad. It's like, oh man, I guess I'm, done for now. I'm about to get shot.
How do they usually end? Do you know how the dream ends? Usually?
No, because usually you don't die in a dream, right? So it's like probably it ends by me dying, but it never gets to that
getting
point.
Shot. Oh,
well, I don't like. It's not like you feel like you're getting shot. It's
I
like
know.
You feel like you're about to get shot, and then it's like, oh, this is the end. And it's like, oh, I must have gotten shot or something, but you never actually feel it, Well,
it's like the end of The Sopranos. It's like it just goes black, right? It just if you get hit in the head or something, what's to say you even hear or see or feel anything? So anyway, like that's just man.
Yeah, and sometimes also I have those falling or trying to get out of a collapsing like tower or cliff situation type dream where I'm also completely screwed, and it's like that's also part of the chase type dreams where sometimes I'm being chased, but I'm not even like being chased in a realistically like escapable scenario. It's like I'm being chased and I'm already like at some cliff that's like so high up that I never could have actually gotten there in the first place. It's like some little ledge that is impossible to climb up because it's just like some 3 foot by 3 foot little platform that's like 300 feet up on some cliff, right? And then it's like, wow. And then some helicopter's like trying to shoot me, and it's like, wow, I'm really screwed right now. I have absolutely no chance. And it's like, well, hopefully I can like jump and aim at something that I'm not gonna hit hard enough to like die from. And like, I don't know, sometimes it's like those situations where I decide to jump and there's some like pylon, like, wireframe metal tower thing that's like, or I'm on one of those things that's like a couple 100 feet high, and then the next rung down is like 50 feet lower or something, and I'm like, well, they're going to shoot me from that helicopter or something, so I'm pretty screwed, so, I might as well try it, and then I like luckily jump down like 50 feet, and then I think I'm going to like die once I hit it because it's like 50 feet down. It's like clearly far enough where if you hit the metal platform at that height, you're probably just screwed anyway, no matter what. Yeah. And like, I don't know, I just chance it and then I somehow survive it, and it's like, wow, that wasn't that far after all,
Right, 50 feet survivable, pretty survivable, thanks.
Yeah, it's like, wow, I didn't know I had that ability to jump that far down. Okay, cool, somehow that worked out. And then like, I don't know, it just goes from there. And it's usually like, I guess, survivable for like a surprisingly far fall, I guess, when you're in a dream, because nothing makes like absolute physical sense, right? And I guess also I have those ones where you can kind of fly, or you need to like float for some reason or fly, and obviously it's impossible for a human, but it's like the gravity is low enough that you can just like flap your arms and somehow it's enough to like effectively tread water with the air, and it's like the same type of density where I guess you're like the same density as the air or something, and it's the same as treading water, except like I'm just like flapping my arms like at a moderate pace, and it's like just enough for me to like go up like 1 mile per hour or something, and it's like, oh nice, flying wasn't as hard as I thought.
That's a good one. I like that. That sounds like a good dream, dude. That sounds like a pretty nice one, for sure. Like, yeah, floaty ones. Yeah,
But dreams have meanings. It's like, probably it means that, I don't know, like, life is more possible than I think, and I should try more things that usually are probably going to go better for me than I think or something, or basically don't underestimate yourself. That's probably the meaning that I take from that kind of dream,
Well, yeah, like, for most of your dreams, it's like, take a leap of faith or whatever it is, right? It's like, well, you don't know what's coming up next, so you might as well just, like, run as fast as you can, jump as high as you can, fall as far as you can, whatever it is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, fly as high as you can.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Like, I kind of feel like it's one of those, like, be in the moment, live in the moment, like, like, it forces you to, like, it's that adrenaline rush thing, and what it does is, like, it kind of makes time slow down, and you really, really get to experience the moment, right? And that's kind of cool in its own way, in my opinion. Like, if you could slow life down, like, what if you could slow life down where, like, every moment felt as slow as it does during, like, an adrenaline rush? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that would last a while, and it sounds like it would be unsustainable, but yeah, there would probably not be enough adrenaline,
right.
Unless you were on some other substances, but
true.
So
that's true.
Back to squaring violence or crime with honesty versus dishonesty, right?
Yes.
So it seems highly unworkable because in modern society, there's like some degree of honesty and there's some degree of dishonesty, and there's this coefficient related to it. Basically, it's like one is the opposite of the other, and so therefore, society is not 100% honest. We are not absolutely 100.0% honest, and you can see that with respect to exaggerating or doing anything. It's like you can always chalk up exaggerations to joking around, because jokes usually have to do with taking something out of proportion that is slightly true, but then saying that that's the punchline, right? And so, like, society by default kind of needs some degree of dishonesty or experimentally projecting extra truths that aren't truths, so falsehoods basically. And so I don't know, everything is slightly, at least some parts dishonest and some parts honest, and then so like it makes it difficult when you have these cultural clashes of saying like how much honesty or dishonesty is necessary and what's the level of law of the jungle type interaction or corruption, whatever you want to call it, that is okay in any given society, or is it the same in every society, right? I guess the question here is, are there actually civilized and uncivilized societies? Are there civilizations and are there savage cultures that are like below civilization or whatever, or is everything just its own civilization and everyone kind of like feels like they are part of their own culture and there's no real like full-on advancement because there's corruption all the way up or down any system, like in codified into law or whatever, with respect to the people who say like, oh, it's okay to be corrupt against the system because the system's corrupt against me, you know, even though it sounds all codified into law and all, you know, like, are there civilized societies and less civilized societies, basically? And that's, right, you know, a controversial political question. It comes up on the Political Compass Survey .net or whatever that website is, and it's one of them that I debate over, you know, in my head, to where it's like, yeah, I guess there are some savage civilizations or cultures and civilized cultures, but it kind of just depends on where you want to live, in what culture you want to be a part of or feel like you fit into, I guess. So I don't know, it might be relative.
It's relative, and like even in this, I don't know, as civilized people, quote unquote, we weed out like certain cultures that, you know, we would consider savage. Like, I don't know, those Sentinelese people on the Sentinel Islands or whatever. Like, you ever seen that? You ever heard of them?
Yeah, because someone went and tried to proclaim the truth of Jesus or something, and even though they didn't speak the language, maybe they attacked him, and then he went back again and got killed, basically, if that's the island you're talking about.
Yeah, they probably sacrificed him or something, but they've been essentially untouched by, you know, other groups of, you know, human civilization for like thousands of years or something. Like, they're like, you know, a natural, like a human reserve or something, like out there on that island at that point. There's like a national park of humans.
Right.
You know, like original humans that, like, you know, basically like every other part of the earth has been touched by like modern technology at some level, except for this one island of people, right? And like, so they're like purely savages, quote unquote, relative to what we would consider, you know, savages. Like, I don't even know what their language is based off of. They're probably some old African based language, but yeah. I mean, anyway, like, you know, they like you said, they just like, I don't know. I think like threw coconuts and like arrows and stuff.
Yeah.
But like, anyway, like I would say that there's, I don't know, would they say that they're civilized, or would they say that we're uncivilized, or that we're civilized, or whatever? Like, what would they think? I mean, it's all,
they might think we are uncivilized, right? Because how dare anyone barge in and invade our space? You know,
right.
It's kind of the same thing as we say with respect to our border security as Americans, right? How dare us get invaded by other people from other nations that decide to not respect our border, our sovereignty, right? We have national sovereignty over our territory, and we will enforce that national sovereignty by any means necessary. So in that sense, we think we're civilized for having this concept of property ownership, land ownership, the right to self-defense and free speech and all this stuff. And so do they. So they're the same as us, I guess. And it's like, that still ends up being the natural state that civilization reaches, I guess, which is you have to defend your territory, because the outsiders, no matter how nice they might seem at first, or you can't really even tell if what they're doing is nice or not, because you cannot even understand them. And the guy may be holding some book, but it looks like some magic sorcery thing that, why would you trust that? Because you're not going to be able to process or understand what they're saying. They're basically speaking in tongues, and magic spells, and could be demons or whatever. Like however they want to express their lack of inherent trust in those principles or ideologies they can't even understand. That's in this book that this guy is preaching at them. Like is their own like justified reason for rejecting him, I guess, and shooting arrows at him and stuff. So like, I guess we look at them as savages, and yeah, they don't have the technology and stuff that we do, but they have enough to actually still defend their territory and still be untouched by modern civilization. And you do say that they are untouched by modern civilization, which they approximately are, except maybe a couple people who went and got killed or whatever. But, like you're saying, for thousands of years, they haven't really interacted and traded with any other society, so they are some of the most untouched, societies ever that we know of today. And at the same time, I guess for thousands of years, going back just evolutionarily for tens of thousands of years, they obviously still had the warriors mentality of defending their fortress and their island and things, because they probably still are descended from other, tribes of people who learned over time the same things that we're still learning today, which is you have to defend your territory, right? So they still go back to the same principles that we go back to today. So on that entire, basal level of things, they're not too different from us, I guess, objectively, in terms of organisms as a species. They're still the same as us.
Yeah. I mean, like you're saying, they probably see themselves as superior or something. Like, I don't know. They've managed to keep their individuality, I guess. But relative to them. But I guess going back to your original, civilization. I guess were you basically debating whether or not civilization, like the idea of civilization, actually is a hoax or not? It's
kind of, or basically whether what is cultural absolutism or relativism? It's kind of like cultural relativism. To what extent should the cultures overlap and mesh, the whole melting pot idea, and the idea that, well, is it our job as whatever civilization we are, like Western, American civilization, is it our, not only mentality, is it our obligation to go spread what we think of as our civilization to the other civilizations, like the Sentinel Island or anywhere else in Africa or any other place we consider like third world or savage civilization, whatever you want to say is the other, civilizations or lack thereof, because, if we consider ourselves a superior society enough to say that we should go and we are obligated to go, preach or whatever about how to build our civilization, are we justified in doing that? Or should we let them do that themselves and let them be themselves? Because we're letting ourselves be ourselves. They're not coming here and telling us how to be unless we let them. So should we go tell them how to be and how to build their civilization, I guess, and copy us? And I guess transitioning to the whole argument of humanitarianism, I guess what I'm saying is that humanitarianism, unfortunately, is kind of a hoax, because you have to kind of build your own way within your own culture, organically. And it's hard to get, proselytized to or preached at and be told, okay, you guys are going to believe this and that. You're going to believe our religion, speak our language, and you're going to, build a well just like this, build a bridge just like this, build windows in this 2-story house just like this. And you're going to copy and you're going to be identical to us. And that will make you guys culturally believe in what we do and act the way we do and have all the same properties like us, and we're all going to be the same civilization now. And for better or worse, you're going to have better health as well, because we're going to teach you about health and you're going to make those better decisions for yourselves. It's all in good faith, maybe it's meant well, but I guess what I'm saying is a lot of it isn't gonna inefficiently end up expending a lot of resources that don't pay off as much as maybe we think they're going to pay off, even if we have the best of intentions. Unfortunately, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah.
Like, can it be appreciated, or is it going to feel like colonization, you know?
Right. Hard to say. I mean, good intentions only go so far, I suppose. I mean, rotten apple sword for the bunch kind of thing, I guess. But like, well, always happens. I guess history repeats itself in that sense. But I don't know. I guess like, oh man,
it's kind of like the question of, can Wakanda be built, and should Wakanda be built? You know, can it and should it? You know, is the question. I guess there's another way of putting it.
And should it?
Yes.
Right. Dude, I don't even know if either one of those is a yes. Hold on.
No.
Yeah, it's probably not.
No.
Yeah.
Because, unfortunately, this is a very interesting just movie, I guess. I mean, I haven't not really honestly watched the whole thing. I've seen snippets. I've seen people watching it at a university. There was a university night where they watched it at a university, and I just kind of saw some of it, was like standing there for a while, like walked by. Like, I didn't watch all of it, but it's a very interesting case where it wasn't a reality or anything, but it became a very culturally relevant film for a lot of people, I guess, enough that they would show it at like a movie night at university and things like that. And it's interesting because, what was it, this Vibranium? Basically the wealth of this isolationist, you know, nationalist civilization became from this Vibranium deposit. Wasn't it just this magical metal with a lot of energy that they harnessed the abilities of in order to create a whole bunch of highly energetic, like magnetic, you know, floating device, like futuristic technologies that ended up becoming super advanced based on, you know, the raw material being available, like the luck of having that vibranium element really plentiful in their society, you know. And
something like that, yeah.
I cannot say that I agree with that interpretation of how that should play itself out, because yes, it can happen, right? You can just get oil rich, you know. The Persian Gulf countries are super oil rich, and they have that raw material resource. They mine it, they enrich it, they ship it off, they send it to other countries, and they get rich off of that. And it's like, good for them. They get it, they have it, they can use it, they should use it, they should figure out how to use it, and they should defend it and use it and provide it to other nations to gain that competitive advantage if they wish to, and trade with us and stuff, right? But you have to have the knowledge to be able to extract it efficiently and maintain that operation with the minimum level of corruption in order to actually, like, have enough social trust and contracts and all to actually get it somewhere else reliably and do that. And it's also a finite resource. So I don't know, I think the luck of the draw and having something in raw material just available in the ground for a certain period of time is not a like highly sustainable way to like have an advanced civilization, I guess. So I guess I don't agree with the sort of quasi-politics of the movie, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think it has to come from something else to do with like the cultural aspect of that civilization, if I'm getting that right, rather than just the luck of the draw of material wealth, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't ever seen the movie, but I agree with it. I mean, like, man, that was a while ago. I should have watched it. But the whole overall concept, oh man, it sounds really bad. Just kind of reminds me of, you know, going for an unobtainium in Avatar. Like, didn't they just go on that planet for unobtainium? Everyone kind of sounded like they had, like, African accents or something. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was just like a more human version of that movie. But anyway, similar social politics going on, I suppose, in both. But anyway, yeah, I don't have like too many references or I don't know too much data on this Wakanda thing. But
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Looking it up on Wikipedia, it looks like it was a meteorite that crashed there, made of the element
a
vibranium.
meteorite.
Yeah.
Hold on, I didn't even know about like this vibranium thing to begin with. Hold on, so
So it was very valuable, obviously, and they sent the country's best scholars to study, turning it into one of the most technologically
More
advanced
advanced.
nations. It has a high rate of mutation in the society due to the mutagenic properties of the vibranium mound, I see. So it's permeated
What?
into much of the flora and fauna. But yeah, it sounds like it's an explanation for the rise of an advanced civilization based on the availability of rare and valuable material resources, which, to me, if that's the case, then shouldn't it always correlate that the places with the greatest biodiversity and material resources should just be the richest, But that's not always the case, right?
No,
Like,
no, they get protected sometimes. Luckily,
yeah,
or
like,
they just like undiscovered or something. Yeah,
yeah, undiscovered or not like efficiently extractable or something. Like, yeah, this is getting
Right.
relatively political, but as is anything.
Right.
But you think about like Venezuela, like they have
Right.
some of the highest levels of proven oil reserves in the world, right? So therefore, they should be as rich as the UAE theoretically, right? And I know it's not probably the same quality and needs to be enriched more or something. So it's probably that is part of the problem, but it's also the mismanagement and the government corruption and the nationalizing of the oil industry probably, and the over dependence of like a one commodity economy, and things that got them in a bad situation and from wealth to poverty within 10, 15 years, or within the generation of Hugo Chavez being in power,
Right.
or I believe that's who it was in Venezuela. Yeah. So like, to me, just having a lot of resources in the ground is not good enough to like all of a sudden be rich or some technologically advanced civilization. Because I don't know, how do you explain Japan, right? Japan is like not a very good place geographically, right? I mean, I recently learned that it has like the snowiest places in the world in like the North Island area, and like obviously the really bad geography relative to the tsunamis and the Ring of Fire and earthquakes and things. Like, it's a super dangerous area. There's not that much flat, level available arable land for like really easy amounts of big agriculture and stuff. So like, I don't know, there doesn't seem to be that great of a correlation in my opinion.
Interesting. The fishing, maybe? I don't know. But aside from that, I can't really think of much. Car industry, but that's like an industry. I guess it's like that's like independent from the location. Supposedly.
Yeah, so now it sounds like I'm being jingoistic. It sounds like I'm going for the cultural supremacy argument here, right? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it does come down to culture and how well, like, as an organism, a society works together. And it's like the extent of the relatedness coefficient, kind of like how much honesty versus dishonesty, or just however much on the same page, I guess, people are with each other, which is weird because it means that maybe Japan has more of like a tight-knit kind of like, very not very open to stepping out of line very much. Just like really harsh, judgmental, like honorific, like, oh, if you mess up, then like, I don't know, kill yourself, or it's really dark. But it's like, oh, if the CEO messes up, like, oh man, he might, or they might commit suicide or something, commit seppuku or whatever. And it's like, I guess that happens a lot more over there, and like maybe that correlates on some level with like some kind of like degree of like radical togetherness that they assume they have to have, or else everything will like collapse, which maybe means the whole Sentinel Island people feel the same way, that they have to absolutely maintain their like dominance over their island and not let like a single outsider ever get in, because once one is in and feels okay about being in, then maybe the rest of them will come after that, basically.
Right. And I think, well, another part of that for them, I think, is like when that guy went, he like gave them some like common cold, and he wiped out like a bunch of them basically, and they thought, I mean, to them, some pale dude from like some other part of the world came in and like put some spell on them and like killed a bunch of them, and like and then they miraculously survived, and it's like, oh no, we can never allow this outsider ever. They're just chanting this, like, we got this dude's head on a stick or something, like, or skull or whatever. But anyway. So, and that's another part of it. But yeah, agreed. Like, they're
I would argue that, spreading diseases or catching diseases is like very, very possible, obviously, as you're saying, when going anywhere that you're not like basically micro-evolved or adapted to, pretty much. So like, historically speaking, like, European people were also pretty much incapable of going into Africa and surviving going into the jungle without catching, diseases that the Africans were, adapted to and likely to be able to survive, I guess.
Right. So that's why they got him the second time. The first time he like cast a spell on them or something, the devil came and killed a bunch of us, and he came back, and now we're gonna get him.
Really, he killed a bunch of them?
Well, according to them, probably. I don't know how they saw it. Like, he came, probably, spread whatever common cold the first time, and then when he came back the second time, or when someone came back the second time, they just assumed that they had to get him. Basically.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was the same story that you're telling.
It wasn't the same person, at least. Yeah, it was probably a different person. Yeah.
Because I think he got shot at, or he got like an arrow in his knee or something, or he got like, maybe he was slightly injured the first time, and then he still came back, and then he got killed the second time. But yeah, like at some point in their history, they obviously interacted with another tribe at some point, and something happened where they got screwed over somewhat enough
really?
Well, I'm just saying, going back thousands of years, they're the same as us on the level of wanting to preserve their tribe enough to be super not friendly to foreigners and treat anyone on the outside as adversaries.
Right.
So it makes sense, which is strange because you go back to our civilization just 80 years or so, and you have a civilization where it is totally normal to totally associate people's race with their nationhood. Their nationality is only their race, and maybe it's like if you are Asian, you can identify as American in 1945, potentially, but also you could still be seen as a foreign adversary of Japan and be put in the concentration camp that FDR set up, and you can still be put in that situation where even if you were, proclaiming American citizenship, born in the U.S., but of that descent of the enemy tribe, which is the Japanese in part, that it was possible to just be seen as one of the enemy, and that apparently was the obvious thing back then. But nowadays it's treated as racism, so it kind of flips pretty quickly, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It flips pretty quickly. I mean, yeah. Society is one heck of a thing, I guess. But like, man. Oh.
So, yeah, besides that, there's also the notion of the inefficiency regarding society. And when you think about the corruption in this whole corporate system and how everything kind of seems like a pyramid scheme, right? We were talking about this off the record, but the whole notion that, well, if you have managerial class managing two people at a time, then it might look really good on a hierarchy or some business layout, flow chart of your business that, there's a 2-to-1 ratio. Everyone manages two people if they're a manager, and then the manager above them manages two other managers, etc. And then at some point, the chain ends, right? The family tree of the business corporate hierarchical structure ends at the top, whatever you want to call it. CEO is there, and it looks like it's all hunky-dory, it's all good, right? But just a 2-to-1, if managers are managing 2-to-1, then in the limiting case, as far as having a large number of employees, there's only half of the employees that are actually non-managers at that point, right? You actually have half of the people at that company who are in the managerial class, which means they are looking over other people's work and they have their own responsibilities. But theoretically, if someone is starting their own business, they are doing all of the functions that business needs to have done, and therefore they're managing it, but they're also doing all of it. So kind of paints the picture that about 50% of people are kind of non-essential in that scenario. You know what I mean?
Yeah. At least 50%.
At least 50%. And that's with the 2-to-1, which sounds kind of extreme, but a lot of these, flowchart structures do look like that. And sometimes you even have people managing one person. So you have, in that case, less than 50% of people appear to be essential for the business in terms of passing responsibilities on to others or overseeing what they're going to delegate others to do. And it kind of feels like that infinite series sum case where the sum of the infinite series, where the ratio is less than 1 for the next term, since it's geometric, is proportionate to 1 over 1 minus r, where r is that fraction. Like if it's half, then half of the employees, it's a 1-to-2 ratio of managers to employees. So that's going to be like double the number of employees that you need if r is 1/2. In other words, you have a 1-to-2, right? But even if you have 1-to-3, 3 looks really good, right? On a flowchart, at least, if you're managing 3 people and then those people are managing 3 people who are also managers, it looks good on a flowchart, but you still end up having that be 2/3 of people who are essential, so you still have 33% who are effectively non-essential in the limiting case of a large organization, even in that case, which still kind of seems highly inefficient if you're used to seeing workplaces and things, I don't know. I've seen cases where it goes from 15 or 16 people being managed by the same person after, for a while, it was only 3 or 4. And then, is it any worse in that case? Maybe not. Maybe it's better, Maybe 4 people micromanaging, 15 people or 16 people. Maybe that goes more poorly than, like, 1 person managing 15, 16, 20 people, but, like, at a distance and having more kind of trust and not micromanaging them as much. You know what I mean?
Yeah, dude. Oh, man. I guess I'll go back to my example that I also mentioned, before the podcast here, which is back at the old office before I quit. There were about 5 of us there, including me, and at any given day, I would say throughout, 5-day work week, there's good 3 days where if you asked any one of us how much time we spent working that day, we would probably have said, less than an hour for each of the 5 of us, right? So on average, I would say one, out of 8 of us should have been essential, but there were only 5 people there or something,
Yeah.
Right? So,
Well, if you're working at a good rate, maybe not painstakingly or breaking your back or anything, or redlining or like sweating, like highly stressing out in a highly crucially stressful situation where it feels like your survival is at stake kind of situation. If you're not like working that hard for that hour, but working at a decently like medium pace, like that you feel is justifiable for an hour, then you're saying like a good 5 work hours are being achieved when really there are about 40 hours being clocked in effectively, right?
No, there should be 200 amongst 5 people.
Among 5 people? Oh, for the whole week. But I'm saying for the day.
5 people each are saying throughout the day that they've only completed 1 hour work, right? So then it's like, well, if it's an 8-hour day for each person, then there's 5 people. There should be 40 like total like hours of work being done, but then there's only like less than 5 or something. So like less than 1 out of 8 of us, probably 1 out of 10 of us, like are essential, and there's 5 of us. Only like half of one of us is actually essential to the entire office, kind of thing,
right?
Like, so that's how bad it was.
And that's not really possible. I mean, you're saying that it is the case, and it is the case.
It was
right?
the case.
It's obviously what's happening. But just going back to the whole state of nature thing, like, that's not really possible to, like, accurately describe a sustainable, realistic state of nature, right? It's like everyone should be essential and feel essential, or else something is up. Something is wrong with that scenario, right? Which is why you probably got out of that scenario, because it just feels too inconsistent with what true reality might mean at some point.
Exactly. Right. You know what it felt like? It felt like the other thing I was mentioning before this call, which is, the hunter who hunts for rabbits or whatever.
Yeah.
Little rodents and stuff. And never caught him for days, and then finally goes to sleep next to a tree, and then some stupid rodent hits his head against the tree and dies, and he just thinks he can do that forever. And it's like, yeah, I've been doing that forever, right? And it feels weird, right? It's like, imagine having that happen forever. It's like, what are the odds of having, rodents or rabbits and whatever, like your food, killing itself like on the tree that you're resting on, like in perpetuity, which is basically what that felt like. It's like, this feels so unnatural, so against nature on every level, which is what you're saying, right? So
right, it's theoretically possible. It's just so unlikely, because you would have to have rodents or organisms that were that poorly adapted to their environment that there were, or just so many of them that they were always hitting their heads on stuff in all directions, basically, in trees and stuff, which wouldn't make any sense because they had to be like adapted to their environment enough to be able to navigate it without dying constantly, right? So like, right. I'm imagining the scenario where there's so many rabbits that they're like covering up the whole ground everywhere and like constantly bumping into stuff and hitting their heads and stuff. And it's like there's basically as much rabbit as there is like grass or something, and that obviously doesn't square with the whole, biopyramid, biomass ratio thing. There have to be at least 10 times as much mass of grass and stuff as rabbits, and 10 times as much mass of rabbits as coyotes and things.
But just imagine having that many. Yeah. Yeah. No.
So it would have to be this massive amount of like deeply growing grass and tree like all over the place. The canopy would have to be too thick. Everything would have to have too much energy, and you would have to get too lucky, basically, that you'd be sitting on the pinnacle of all like organisms, where you could just sit there and have stuff die right next to you and just eat it all the time, and it would be like a healthy animal that just happened to die next to you all the time. And that it's not realistic. If you understand anything about like the Earth, then you know that that doesn't happen. Basically,
It doesn't happen, right? It just seems so, so super unnatural, super fake,
but
But
even in the
yeah,
scenario where one person doesn't just get lucky, but instead, 5 people are in some family or work fam or whatever. It's like 5 people are deciding like, oh, we're gonna go to work. We're gonna go hunting, right? And it's like, then you imagine like 4 of them like just sidelined, just sitting there under a tree or whatever, just like hoping that the other guy goes out and does the hunting, right? It's like one
oh
guy
yeah,
goes and like works hard to like get like a bunch of rabbits or like some like I don't know ox or like bison or something caught or something that's like really big and will like last them like a few weeks or something. I don't know. Like then they like figure out like how to like store or something, like keep from spoiling for long enough, like maybe it lasts them like a week somehow. And it's like one guy like fights really hard, like uses these tools that like you had to like work pretty hard to sharpen and stuff to like throw or like launch at this bison to kill it and like drag it back. And it's like maybe like one guy might be able to do that in one day and come back with enough for a while, but then it's like eventually it's not going to feel sustainable, because then it's going to feel like the equivalent of one guy is like doing all the work for like 5 other people or 4 other people.
right,
And it's going to be like, well, when are you going to go out and like hunt the bison or like get us food or meat or something? And then it's like, well, we're all in this together, we work fam or whatever, it's like we're all big happy family or something. And it's like, well, only if it is your real family, which your work family never is your real family, because it's not a family, right? It's this corporatized notion of like, oh, take ownership and, trust and earn trust and all these corporate style slogans and things that don't fully apply to your situation, but you're supposed to pretend that it applies in order to strive to become something greater, because everyone can kind of feel in their spirit like the spirit of just trying to strive and become greater. So there is something true and valuable in it, but it's like it never really gets applied to the extent that you would fully need it to get applied to actually apply to the situation with the people that you're dealing with. So it's like
right.
just fake at the bottom of it, unfortunately, because it's like being sold the idea that you can fully like give your soul, sell your soul to a situation and have it be worth it. But I guess it never is, because you have to decide never to sell it still, basically. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can decide never to sell it and like play it off as if you did or something. I don't know. Like at least you don't have to really admit to yourself that you sold it and therefore you never did. I guess like I mean, as long as you're honest to yourself about it, as long as like I don't know. I guess you're just talking about like the balance of like you know like the whole like social politics and stuff in like the office or whatever. Like that's I guess it's basically what it is. I mean, it's like, man, it's just like still a really hard topic to like get to any sort of conclusion on, because I basically like gave up on it myself, which is like pretty bad, because I don't give up on things. I suppose like I like pretty like much pride myself in like not giving up on like certain aspects of life, especially like overall like humanity level things. But like I basically thought that it wasn't worth trying to balance social politics in the workplace, especially after the stuff that like what we were just saying about not feeling essential and not feel like anyone is essential, like including myself, right? It's not just like, oh man, I'm surrounded by idiots. It's like, well, I'm also kind of an idiot. Like I could be like moving up, quote unquote, in my career, whatever like the heck that means, like instead of just like going stagnant and doing nothing in this workplace and getting paid. But like but I'm doing this, right? But I should be feeling happy doing this, because it's I'm doing nothing essentially for the money. But then at the same time, there's that super organic natural level that kicks in, right? Which we talked about, and it's like, well, it doesn't feel right on some organic level, because yeah, the animals are just going to keep running into the trees every day. It doesn't make sense. So, I mean, likelihood of that is so small, and like if it were to happen in real life, I would start to question like actual reality. Like like if that guy were to sit in a tree and like have like animals die in front of him for like 2 weeks straight. At some point, he would start to question like, oh man, am I in hell? Like, is this real? Like, none of this is real.
Or am I a god, and am I summoning
right,
all these animals to come to me and submit themselves to me as food for my nourishment? And is it easy enough that I'm actually mentally doing it by psychokinetic energies or something? And how much energy is there really to go around, and how do we have so much energy? And are we really summoning all this, hydroelectric and all this fossil fuel and maybe all this nuclear at some point and all this solar energy and wind and stuff? And are we really getting away with having so much energy to extract so many resources and grow so much more food than we actually need as individuals, so that only 2 or 3% of people can be in agriculture, or 1% can grow food instead of the 95% like it always used to be? And just how lucky does that make us? And are we that lucky, or are we like cursed to eventually not realize how lucky we are and collapse basically as we go ahead and do this whole non-essential work type exercises and all?
I mean, we'll probably collapse, not fully, but we'll just dwindle down to like the essentials, hopefully, which is what is the best case scenario at this point, right? It's just like you can cut out just enough fat for just enough essential individuals to make just enough of a difference to keep everything going like smoothly or something. I don't know, like.
Well, yeah, but unfortunately, as we've discussed, it's the case that a lot of people are going to find out that it is not going to feel that fulfilling to transition or do things that are actually absolutely essential on a survivalist basis. And it's like rough, I guess, and not as like, office jobby to like do more essential work sometimes. And not everyone is going to like essential work, I guess, because a lot of people have that entitlement mentality where they want someone else to do the essential work, and they don't think they would like, so-called stoop to the level of doing the essential of like providing their own survival mechanism. Like, I guess basically we need to be like toughened up more, and like it's like a dark statement to say, but like we need to like suffer our way through like what it really means to like be all survivalist, I guess, a bit more, because it's kind of inevitable, I guess, if we want to get back to essentialism, which I think we need to, because cutting the fat is good. It just makes us more efficient, and it forces people, unfortunately, their incentive then is to care more about their communities and their families enough to like provide for them by freeing up the necessary or the unnecessary labor in order to, collapse the job market down to more of the essentials. And the essential people, therefore, would get paid more, because that's how the demand would work in the job market, right? The supply would go down. There'd be more demand for essential workers, and they would get paid more for that reason. And because they would also be credited with more so what they're actually producing, meaning some people's pay would go up if they actually work hard and try to be really essential, and some people would get laid off, and therefore their pay would go down, and therefore they would be penalized for and would feel eventually like this is this massive wealth transfer and kind of a scourge on them, and like they would feel victimized heavily by being forced out of an industry in which they have been determined to be non-essential. But I mean, it kind of needs to happen, and it does happen all the time, because I see it where you see teams scale down and you get rid of one manager, you turn 2 managers into 1, or you turn 4 managers into 1, and then you just look at the productivity, you look at the output, and it either stays the same and you meet your targets, or arguably in some cases, depending on the social, culture, the toxicity of the workplace, the micromanaging, and if anyone is not doing a great job at managing, productivity and everything could actually go up, and you've gotten rid of 3 workers, so maybe you've gotten a lower payroll and you've gotten more productivity, so you've made things more efficient, but 2 people or 3 people are now out of a job, and it's like, what are they going to do? Well, they just have to figure out how to do something better that's more essential, and it's like, they got let go. Too bad for them, but I guess we didn't need them, and whoever's most essential has the ultimate job security. They don't have to worry as much about being laid off.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. You don't have to worry about getting laid off for sure. If you can be perceivably essential. And I don't know. It's like still hard for me to argue who is actually essential on like an organic level. It's like
yeah, on a corporate level, because corporations are kind of inorganic in that sense.
On a corporate level, it's also still hard for me to argue. I don't know. It's like, well, it's like we need somebody to fill a certain role or something, like, we're expanding the business in like a certain sector and like, I don't know, or a certain area, like, or something, and like, so we need to hire like a sales rep in this area. It's like, okay, do we really need to, or can somebody just spend like an hour, or some existing sales rep can just spend like an hour of their time to like do that, because we know they're not like working 8 hours a day. We all know that. It's like, we're not, but like, no one's going to say that, right? Everyone's going to assume that everyone's already working 8 hours a day, and so we're going to hire another sales rep, and then like relocate them from wherever they are in the world to that location, and then like have them work there, pay them 8 hours a day. And when everyone also kind of knows that, like, no, the sales rep over in like California, Bay Area or something can already like take care of that job remotely using an hour of their time, when they're realistically only working like 3 or 4 hours out of their 8-hour day anyway. Like, you know what I mean? So there's already like, I don't know. I'm just so like over it.
Yeah, it's hard once you get the gravy train going to actually accept that it ever might not go. It's really hard, because I know what it's like to totally max out and work an unholy amount of hours in a day or in a week, and like work hard, like objectively, and
right. Of course.
Knowing the entire spectrum of that is really eye-opening. I know what it's like to absolutely like get thrown for like a backbreaker. Like, I guess not literally, but like to do kind of a backbreaking like bender type day / couple days / week, and it's like just kind of an unholy amount of like work. Like, I don't even want to admit or say it, but it's pretty much just the unholiest like amount of work that most people can imagine. And I've done that, so I know the whole spectrum also of being at a workplace where there's nothing to do and you're just sitting there trying to think of things to do, trying to talk your way into getting other people to be interested enough in investigating or doing whatever to touch up on things, like make things slightly better on a peripheral level and fix little things here or there and come up with things to do, and like just get up, walk around, and ask other people who also seem bored, like, oh, do you have anything to do? Do you need anything that you need help with? Like, can I help out, or like shadow whatever, or like, are you busy? And like, I know that kind of like slowest possible grueling day also, in which you pretty much have absolutely nothing. And so even if you're doing the bare minimum, it's nothing, and even if you're not doing the bare minimum, it like still appears to be nothing. And it's like, oh no, what's going to happen today? Are people just going to be like watching some trilogy? We're just going to watch trilogies today? Like, that's going to be mind-numbingly, boring slash unfulfilling. It's gonna feel shameful, right? It's like, who goes through and like watches trilogies of like Star Wars when they're at work or something? Like, you're not actually working at that point. You're like deciding to like, you know, do some team bonding, like let's watch some classics or something, and let's watch some classic American you know, movies series or something, and recite the lines or whatever. And it's like, yeah, like, I don't know, I guess I've experienced the full spectrum of possible rates of workload basically, and I definitely enjoy a slightly heavy workload more than an empty workload, you know, because it makes you feel more justified going home and feeling like you did something, plus the time passes faster to where you can get back to where you do want to be, which is not working. Outside work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the whole contrast, like, theory for me. It's like, you know, the whole, you can't have too many sunny days in a row without a rainy day, and vice versa, right? So, I mean, same with work, right? You can't just, like, chill all the time. You do need to work hard in order to, like, play hard or relax hard or whatever, you know, however you want to look at it. But, yeah, no, I agree. And I was kind of, that was one of the reasons for me too. I'm like, okay, barely not working at all, essentially, realistically speaking. Like, you know, I was being honest to myself. It's like, I'm barely doing anything, you know, and it's like, well, might as well, I'm basically like, lying to myself, like, you know, if I'm not like playing hard, essentially, like if I can't just like completely let go and play hard, I'm basically lying to myself. I guess that's what I'm saying. And then I had to just like completely let go, because like at that point, like, you know, realizing I was barely essential, it's like, well, I might as well just like, you know, embrace that. I guess.
Yeah, I may have seen a situation where someone was feeling so much like they were on the gravy train that they would just like do, you know, gambling on their phone and things, and then just decide, well, whatever, I'm just gonna not say anything and leave and like not tell anyone, but somehow end up going to like casinos and stuff. And it's like, well, anyone get a hold of this person? And it's like, no, nobody's heard from them. And it's like, huh, wonder where they go or where they went and where they usually go or something, you know. And it's like, well, I guess they're just milking the gravy train / feeding their addictions or whatever. And it's like, nice, I hit another, nice. You know, nice. Jackpot or whatever. Nah, I mean, okay, yeah, some people have a strange degree of, you know, or ability to use their work funds to like feed like their addictions basically. And I guess that's all of us, because we all are not like the idealized human form of what we could be. So therefore I guess it kind of applies to all of us. So I'm just like poking fun at others, but like, yeah, some people seem to get away with an awful lot, I guess. Or somehow sometimes people even have families and they still go through these unfortunate addictive phases of becoming gambling addicts. And, you know, I don't know, like, it must feel really soul crushing to have to like work and support the family and go through this like addiction where you're mostly supposed to realize you're working for your family and like supporting them and your kids and whatnot, but at the same time feeding this side, you know, addiction that you're stuck on. It's like needing to pick up more hours for, and like everything feeds in back into that, and you have to like stay afloat even more so because you have this like fat that you need to cut out that you're like funneling extra money towards that you're losing stuff on. And it's like, that must be really bad to go through, you know, which is why I'm so strict with trying to like become some kind of idealized version of myself, which I guess will never happen, but have some kind of like fortitude to know that I'm not going to like fall down that path or something before like settling down fully, you know. Like, I don't know, a lot of people seem to be stuck on so many other things still and already be trying to like support their family. Like, it's crazy at some point. to see like our society, I guess, and how many people have like fallen down that path.
Yeah, dude. I mean, at this point, you're nowhere close to being far down any kind of rabbit hole where it's like irreversible, right? Like you're saying, there's a lot of people who are like really far down some sort of rabbit hole, like whatever sort of addiction, like alcohol, gambling. I mean, gambling's pretty bad. I think they're both pretty bad. But,
Gambling, once it's on these slot things that you can do on your phone, or that it's like not even algorithmically clear what the odds are, it's mind numbing, or it's mind boggling how that's so appealing, I guess it's just all the flashy just online slots,
digital slots, essentially.
Yeah.
Purely algorithmic,
you don't even know the odds. Just like, flashy, shiny, nice bonus, I hit the jackpot, $200, $300 or something, and it's like, I got it back a couple $100, I needed that was a good hit,
What? That's really bad. It's like you don't even know what the RNG like is. I mean, it's basically an RNG, but like, oh man, that's really bad. I can't imagine, dude. I mean, well, okay, it's just playing off the pure mental. I mean, just proof that it's a pure mental addiction. There's nothing to it. That's all it is, right? I mean, if you can just do it with something digital and like completely fake and non-existent like that, then it just proves that the whole thing is just really fake.
Well, it's a lottery, right? It's the idea that, maybe this will be the way I get out of this loop that I'm stuck in. It's like, maybe the loop that I'm stuck in will provide a way out of it, and hopefully it will, because it always should, right? It's like, maybe there's that slight chance that the loop will get me out of it, because the whole goal of getting into that loop was that it would get me out of a bigger loop, basically. But now it's like, it's actually not. It's actually getting you into a smaller and smaller loop that you're now stuck deeper in, basically.
Yeah. Pretty soon it just comes back to like the same point over and over and over, quicker and quicker, until you just stay on the same point. But yeah, oh man, it's pretty bad. I've seen there's some pretty bad like examples from like the previous company. I guess the first company I worked for, I guess there were like a lot of Vietnamese, like boomer age people that had serious gambling problems, like just absolutely, like, I don't know. I think we got paid like twice a month, and like sorry, that'd be pretty bad. Like, pretty funny.
Twice a week.
That'd be hilarious. I can't even imagine like the payroll like organization involved with that. But like, yeah, no, twice a month. So every 2 Fridays or something, we got paid, and like these guys would like go out gambling with like their entire paycheck, and like you could tell on Monday which ones like actually one came up on top and which ones did, and like most of the times they all looked really depressed. And like once in a while one of them would look really giddy, like they're just like, and they would obviously just be way happier than anyone else in the office that day. And it's just like, I won 5K last Friday, and it's just like, oh cool. It's like, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm pretty sure like their paycheck was at least like 3 to 4K or something like that. And like, this is after, many weeks of possibly losing. So they're just only telling us about like the 5K win. But like, I don't know, I just had to think about that just now. It's a serious problem, man.
That's why in order to go to the casino, you've got to assume that you're going to lose, because that's what the average person is going to do, right? So you have to somehow go in with money enough that it's fun to see if you can win a lot or whatever you think is a lot. But you have to go in with a small enough amount that you think it's a lot, enough to be like possible to win a lot without being too much that you're sad if you lose it for some reason, because you have to go in knowing that you're probably going to lose it, I guess. So that's obviously the better mentality than like, this is like a source of income, I'm going to go in and use this to make money. at this casino, right? Because then you're setting yourself up for like devastation and like, yeah, I just don't want to walk out of there and feel that shame or like that devastation feeling, basically, of like probably what people are feeling when they actually gamble like several times more than they really should be, you know, and lose all of it, kind of deal. So like, yeah, I guess that last time we went to that casino and I lost what I went in with, you know, hopefully I didn't look super devastated walking out, because like I took out $100.
Trying not to.
Yeah. Like I was bummed that I lost the $100, but it wasn't too devastating. You know, at least I didn't go back to the ATM quick. And like lose it again or something, or like start piling up and just like playing the the martingale method or whatever, where you just keep doubling your money, and it's like just keep doubling your money and eventually it'll pay off. You know, it's like or you'll go bankrupt, because that's the other option.
Oh jeez, yeah. Oh man, chances still are in favor of being bankrupt by far, but
it means eventually you are guaranteed to go bankrupt, but each time you chance it again, there's still that 50% chance that you'll make the money back that you first started with. But it's still a really bad gamble to do the martingale method.
Yeah, it's relative to like a 1 in a million chance of winning. So you're not like, or worse or something. Well, way worse. So anyway, but like I remember that day, and I felt pretty bad. I was like, first of all, I usually see you win at things. I'm not used to seeing you lose. Like, well, obviously, this is gambling. This is straight up just straight luck. There's nothing to it. But even then, it's like, man, I feel like you have pretty good luck or something. Knock on wood.
Well, that was whatever. A less than lucky chance. Like,
I know.
It was so relatively unlucky set of outcomes, because every single thing that was like less than 50% chance of happening never happened, basically.
Never happened.
I hit on 50%? I hit a whole bunch of 50% chance ones almost, but I was at the same time I was doing like multiple 50% odd ones like every time, and I was hitting like 40% of them, I guess, for the 50% odd
less
ones.
Than 50.
Less than half of them were hitting, or something, maybe 35% or something. And then the ones that had like a 1 out of 6 chance, like I kept playing 1 out of 6 chances every time, like obviously more than 6 times, I guess. I did like things that were like 1 out of 5, 1 out of 6 chances of happening, and then those never happened either, and I did that several times. So it was like likely that I would have hit at least once, more than 50% chance of hitting at least once, but they never hit. So I had to just push it until I bankrupted myself for the day, which is good, because I was not absolutely bankrupt, overall, but just for the day, it's nice to just like stop.
Well, like you said, I mean, like you're saying earlier, you don't invest more than you're willing to lose, right? So that's kind of how it is. I mean, if you need the money for rent or payments, whatever, you don't gamble it. That's crazy, right? That's like not money you should be playing with. So, but like you said, I mean, you did the right thing. After $100, you stopped right there, which is crazy, because for me, it's like, all right, like, I mean, obviously, most other people would think this way. I wouldn't think this way. I would agree with you, but most people would be like, all right, I came all the way here. I took out $100. I just like lost it in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
like, all right, another 100, whatever. Like, this will be the day where I just do another 100. Because, like, come on, like, I want to stick around for a little bit. I didn't even get a drink yet. Like, like that kind of thing. Like,
oh yeah, it's the experience. Right? That wasn't fun enough. It's not fun until I win.
Yeah,
but it's like. Yeah. You were never going in to win. You're going in to hopefully have fun and win, but you have to expect to lose still. And it's like, well, once you ran out and got unluckier than usual, what's to say you're entitled to a good time that includes winning at this point? It's like, maybe that's the universe telling you, get out of here, which it is basically,
Yeah, right, I guess. Oh, man.
Unless you
$100 is not small money. Yeah.
Unless you want to like hang around and watch someone else play or something. But like, I decided I was bankrupted for the day.
Yeah, I mean, you walked straight out, which is awesome. I mean, like you sound like you were like, all right, let me just like stick around and watch other people play, right? Because that might have drawn you back in at some point, and so it's like no, you just like cut it off right there. Like we were like in and out within like half an hour. Oh yeah, there were.
Well, it was probably like
yeah,
15 minutes.
yeah.
Well, we did ask that person like where the machine was for the
That's
roulette
right.
wheel.
That's right.
Because I guess it wasn't in the same place I remember it being.
Yeah, we walked around for a bit. Yeah.
Yeah, but that was only
actually,
like a few minutes. So we were probably only in there for like 20 minutes. It was only 20 minutes. Most of it was probably me figuring out my like card pin / waiting in line
and
to
then
get
finding
to get the ATM money out, and then like asking the guy where the machine was. Yeah, finding it, and then really playing was like 5 minutes probably or something.
5
It was
minutes,
probably like 7 minutes or something.
Right. Like oh man. Okay, so like honestly, like I've never seen you lose that bad at anything ever in my life. That must have taken the cake by far, dude.
Well, yeah, you never know. Like, basically, I assume that I'm gonna lose it all really quick. I guess if you're playing something like that, like I basically am mentally prepared to just lose very quickly and just walk out. Because that's what you have to do, in my opinion. Unless your plan is to stick around and just like watch other people play stuff and like have fun or whatever by like just drinking and watching someone else play. But like that, I don't know. I guess you didn't seem like you wanted to go play anything else. I guess so. Like we were basically done at that point.
Oh, I was there to like, I don't know, spectate and also possibly spectate other people. But then it also seemed like after you lost 100, which is completely understandable. Like after you lost 100, that you're just like, all right, no, we're out. Like I'm like, yeah, that's understandable. We're out. Like I'd be like, I wouldn't stick around either. You know what I mean? Like, because the longer I stick around after losing $100 that quickly, I'd be like, all right, another 100. Like what? Like that was like 5 minutes. Like, oh, come on, like but
it's like, all right,
it's
now that I'm sticking around. Oh man, look at these people. It's like you can always point out someone else who won something. It's like, oh, look at that person over there. They're celebrating. They just hit some jackpot. It's like, oh, nice. Ding, ding, ding. It's like it's still going for them. Like, what if that could be me again? It's like it's not my day right now, but like, what if it still is somehow? Like, look over there. It's someone's day. Like, it's their day. So like, maybe I'm next. Let's go back and do this. Like, double or nothing.
Oh man, that's so great. I mean, yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's just like, oh, it's so bad, but like, oh, gambling.
I don't know. Casinos are okay. Yeah. Like, I guess they're kind of fun. It's kind of weird that they exist, and it's like the first time I remember going to one, it like was kind of weird that it existed, and seeing people play and realizing that it was real money they were playing with, and that they were playing something that was like mostly not skill, and they like try to like spin it as somehow having to do with skill is like just kind of strange to come to terms with, I guess. But obviously I ended up participating. But yeah, it's still kind of like bizarre that adults go and play with so-called real money, But I guess it portrays some kind of aspect in human nature where we all know that money is kind of fake on some level, and that it can be just like played with and like randomly distributed somehow, and that we're comfortable with like trying to pretend we're gonna like have it randomly distribute to us or something.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder. I mean, it's some sort of animalistic trait that it plays on, but like, I don't know, the whole idea of probabilistic chance, like of getting something you don't deserve. Like, I don't know, like, I don't know what part of nature actually like mimics that or what it's playing off of. The whole gambling. I guess it is just hunting, right? Like you can't guarantee that you hit it every time. So like you gotta aim right. You gotta like breathe, get it right between the heartbeat or something, and let go of the arrow or whatever it is. And like, hope that your arrow's straight. Hope there's no wind or anything like that. You don't hit any bush or anything, and then it gets the deer or whatever you're trying to hit. And so, chances are, you might not hit it. So it is that gambling aspect. You know, it's like, well, out of 10 arrows, can I get one? Right? It's like, you know, the arrows cost me time and money to make, or time and resources rather. So, yeah, I mean, but.
Or whether the deer even shows up within the savanna or within the meadow or the forest or whatever, and whether you can actually find one that day or something, even that you can actually catch, right? It's like, do you find the right trail that they're going to go down or something? And it's like, hopefully at some point you will, but yeah, there's no guarantee, no matter how much skill you have, that you're going to see one at that particular trail,
Right.
like visible that day, that's within reach, that's not like hiding behind a bunch of bushes and stuff. So like, yeah, it is luck based in hunting and just things that are
Right.
partly skill based anyway, right? But like,
Right.
do you remember the time that the United States president said or described himself in terms of a deer bolting, you know, because this guy Trump, you know, survived that assassination attempt.
Right.
I think it was interesting how he described himself as if he was being hunted as a deer for a minute there. He was like, well, sometimes, you know, when you're hunting, then a deer will just bolt, you know, at the last second, you know, you'll be ready to shoot it, and then all of a sudden it'll just bolt as you're shooting it, and then you'll barely miss, you know. It was something like that, you know. So I don't know. He
Right.
described himself as if he was a deer that was like psychically bolting or something
Right.
at the
right,
last
right.
second in order to dodge this bullet that he didn't know about. And he kind of like, I don't know, he like implied that it was one of those kind of scenarios. And it was like funny to see, I guess.
That's really funny. Yeah, it was like this divine like intervention sort of thing. I mean, like, or I don't know, like just yeah, somehow telepathic, like, you know, beyond explanation. Yeah, just yeah, like I've heard of that before. I mean, maybe it's just from people who hunt a lot, and then if you hunt like enough times, you'll probably, you know, because animals are so skittish that, you know, if you hunt enough times, you know, chances are you're gonna fire right before one starts to like dart away for whatever random reason, right? But
Yeah, maybe it's unrelated. Yeah.
maybe it's completely unrelated. But if it isn't, well, that's interesting, I guess. But,
If it is not unrelated, maybe it is the just idea that they sense some kind of extra level of concentration on them, that they're being watched, or somehow your mental energy is like delaying. Maybe you're breathing like less intensely for a second or something, and it like just affects the atmosphere or the sound enough to make them feel
right.
that they're like more intensely being focused on or being watched or something in that moment. And somehow it's that feeling of being watched that makes them uncomfortable
Right.
enough that they bolt somehow, and it like just catches up with them at the last second or something. And it's really hard to make a causal relationship there, but maybe it's just that feeling of being watched or something.
Yeah, it's like on a level that they can't even explain it within their own reference frame kind of thing. It's like
Right.
it's right out of explanation for themselves even, but they just felt like they had some instinctual thing, like reaction, like, you know, relative to them that they had to run. And then it's like, oh, thank goodness I read. Something just like almost tried to hit me. Like, you know, like,
Yeah, maybe it's like
Yeah.
the sound and the vibrations and the fact that maybe they subconsciously felt that some big organism was walking around, like trampling
Right.
twigs and stuff, like many yards away or something earlier, but they didn't feel like it was scary enough to bolt away yet. But it made them more like on edge, you know. And then so they're like, what's that, like? Or maybe it's even subconscious, they're like feeling that they should stop or something, and then they do stop and they're like, why'd I stop? Well, I don't know, I just felt less comfortable in this situation now, and I'm not going to walk any farther like that way for some reason. And it's like subconsciously they feel like something's trampling around over there, but they're not scared enough to bolt yet. And then all of a sudden, like, they feel even more uncomfortable because now they don't know why they're uncomfortable, and they subconsciously don't feel the same like vibrations now that they did a second ago, because it's like that feeling of being watched, I guess, means that like, oh, something seems really quiet now, or something like too quiet, it's that feeling that,
Right.
oh, why is it so quiet? It's too quiet. And then they freak out and they bolt away. So like maybe it is somehow still causally related, like physically and like vibrationally somehow.
Dude, that's a really good. Yeah. No. I mean, that's really good. Like, interpretation or insight. I mean, because I feel like there is that whole moment of silence thing. Because I was thinking about that, like, as you were saying it too, like, because I mean, I'm just thinking about as an animal, like as deer or something, it's like really sensitive to like perceiving the environment, probably much more than us humans are on like some absolute level, right? So like they're probably hearing they okay like
Yeah, because
most
they're more
a lot
used to
of-
being predated
right.
than we
Like,
are.
Yeah, and a lot of animals know what it sounds like to be hunted by a human. It's not
Yeah.
like it's the first time a deer's been hunted, right? So they know.
Right.
It's like when a human hunts me, they're gonna make a lot of noise until they get really silent. That means they're about ready to get me. Like, because when humans get really silent, they're like aiming. They got the crosshairs on the thing. They're trying to breathe. They're trying to be as quiet as possible, and they're like waiting for like between the heartbeat or something. They're trying to be as quiet as possible. And so for animals, they know it's like, well, it's dead quiet right now. All of a sudden, like that thing that was making like little rustling noises out there in the distance, all of a sudden just stopped for like 5 seconds. And like relative to my instincts, that basically means I got about like 1 or 2 seconds to dart before I'm done for. Like like it's
Right.
like yeah.
It's
So,
like the
yeah.
predator that they might sense as a predator. It's like kind of like this ghost that's like haunting them, but they
Right.
don't know exactly like what kind of thing it is, maybe, but it feels like something that could pose a threat in the distance, and it's like maybe that's bad news over there. Then it's like now all of a sudden, you don't hear it anymore, so it's like, well, where is it now? It's like that uncertainty thing where it's like that thing that may have been a predator is now like dispersed over an uncertain
Right.
area now. It's like, where they go? I don't know their momentum or something. I don't even know if it's still around, but that basically might as well mean like it's right on top of me right now, or it's about to pounce basically. So yeah,
Right.
just still the same vibe basically. So they must sense that there's something hunting it and be super sensitive to that, because they have to bolt in some situations, because we always see them bolt like well before we think they would necessarily need to, I guess. If you just walk up, it's like deer get usually very afraid very fast when they're still very much far away from humans, I guess. Like, you could be like 100 feet away, right? And you could just be like
right.
walking down a trail, and the deer could be like not even on the trail, but like 3 feet off the trail, like behind some bush, next to a tree, and like off the trail, but it sees you coming from like 100 feet away. That
Right.
like in several seconds, it looks like you're about to be like 5 feet away from them, and they'll see that and sense that, and they'll already like freak out and start bolting away.
Dude, it's funny because like a lot of times, all right, and it's funny that you say that because like a lot of times when I see deer or like rabbits or stuff like that, the moment I see them is the moment they're running away from me. It's like I
Yeah.
haven't even seen them until they started running away, and it's like, oh, there's movement out there. Oh, it's like a deer, like. But I wouldn't have seen them if they didn't start running from me, like. So.
Yeah, where usually maybe if they didn't bolt away, you would have seen them and been like, oh, look, a deer, there's a deer right there, oh, nice. And then you just like stared at it for a few seconds and like watched to see what it was doing, and then just like walked off or something. But just tying it back into the whole Sentinel Island thing, it's like they're just used to having like very bad relationships with humans, or being hunted, basically, I guess.
Right. And I guess for whatever reason, like the whole world's agreed to like not perturb them any further, even though we could just like waltz in there with cannons or something, or just nuke them, but like we're not gonna do that, right? So we somehow like agreed to like maintain some sort of peace with this like absolute tribalistic. I don't know. Basically, we're just like admitting as a world that we're going to treat them as some sort of like human zoo habitat thing, which is literally what that is. Like, because you can, you know, nuke any zoo. It sounds really bad, but the animals in every zoo think they're like gods because they're getting fed all the time and they're not getting like contested with, right? So, but anyway.
Yeah, maybe. Or are they miserable? I can't tell. Like, I mean, I'm not a zookeeper or anything, but
True.
there's that argument where, yes, animals in captivity live much longer because we force them to stay alive by, we help them more with medicine. We keep them away from, more naturally occurring diseases that are out there. We keep them well fed, and we keep them not being hunted and stuff. So they do live longer, but
Right.
they don't live as freely because we confine them to the cage or wherever they live that they're allowed to go, and then we make everything on our schedule as humans to where and when like they're going to eat and how and what they're going to be, their diet is going to consist of. So they have a longer lifespan, but do they enjoy it as much? Like, obviously, as humans, the animal keepers, the ones who are more environmentalist type, tree hugging or animal hugging, like zookeeper people, they always, they do want to have the best intentions of making their animals as happy as possible. Probably they probably do have the best intentions, but is it still possible to give as enjoyable of a life of an organism that's in captivity, or is it even worth it? And it's like, I guess it comes back to, is human civilization an organization that is a worthy enough endeavor that it's making us all happier in the modern era enough, like to analogously state that we also know how to make animals happier by putting them in captivity. I don't know if they're happier, basically.
Wait, in the sense that like, are we putting ourselves in some sort of captivity, or
Yeah,
like,
basically, because
yeah,
we are
okay.
domesticating ourselves by being civilized on some level of saying that, well, we're going to insulate us from all these, insecurities of disease, and we're going to have better medicine, we're going to live longer lives, but that comes at a cost of compromising our freedom and our, free-spirited, free-roaming, free will, basically, to just do whatever we actually feel like doing, as animals, basically. But
that's true.
means if you like buy into that, then I guess you're basically admitting you're some feral animal at some point and might as well just go homeless, just go rogue. Ditch society, go in the woods, and just like live off the land, independent of any like even like land that you properly own according to the government and stuff, and just live off the river, woods, water, and land and stuff. That's just like out there.
Dude.
Which I still to this day look up to for some reason. I look up to the people who actually can just go out there and survive as like hobos somehow. Which I know on some level means they're probably begging and getting stuff off of regular civilization. But the ability to survive in that kind of scenario feels like it's like halfway in between like the honorable old school method of fully providing yourself versus being dependent on modern civilization. It's like they're still having one foot in the door, and it seems kind of, degenerate on some level. It's like, oh, they're less clean, they don't shower as often, and, they don't shave as often, and it's like they don't have all these luxuries that we feel entitled to. So in that sense, they're degenerates. They have one foot in the door still, expecting handouts because they don't fully provide absolutely everything for themselves, but neither do we. So it's like, I don't know. On the other hand, I still kind of like look up to them on some level for still being able to survive in situations where I wouldn't feel like I would immediately feel comfortable getting away with doing that.
Yeah, I mean,
like, how do they stomach it and still are comfortable with doing it? And it's like, well, I guess that's in any organism's nature. It's the whole tying it back to poverty is the state of nature, and I guess we will end it on that note, pretty much, for this talk
great.
today. But appreciate you for joining us. Where's my couch today? And do you have any other things to muse about or thoughts you want to get out there before we end this StatGDP podcast of philosophy-themed, workplace-themed episode for the day?
Well, I would just like to sort of go full circle to the beginning of this podcast by saying that I will be continuing my search for my couch here, and but I will likely never find it because there's no such thing as my couch.
Right.
And that's all I'm gonna say about that.
We're redefining ownership today. This has been StatGDP. May you live long and prosper, anyone out there. And yeah, even though I'm not even a Trekkie, so apologies for appropriating that quote. It's not really mine. I'm not really one of those, but we will see you guys next time. Signing out.